I changed some audio in between the first recording, um, or the first video that I put out, that little introduction, and this one. So I'm hoping that things sound a little bit better. I'm still playing the game while actively talking. Um, and yeah, we're still doing bots. I don't care. This isn't about the gameplay. And if it is, I mean, you could just put this on in the background as far as I care. But I actually have a topic I want to talk about here. And it's one that I'm kind of alluded to in the beginning or that very first introduction video. But like things have been tough for me recently. And as a result of that, kind of end of last year, aka 2025, beginning of this year, 2026, I've been making a lot of changes over a variety of aspects of my life, specifically physical, mental, spiritual, and oh my goodness, societal or socially. Um, Physically, I mean, we're gonna get into that in momentarily, but if we're looking at how do I want to word this? If we're looking at these aspects of life, there's actually an author. His name is Stephen Covey. He has passed away at this point, but he wrote a book, and you've probably heard of it, called The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the seven habits is called sharpening your saw. And without going all the way into the book and this, that, and the other thing, um, sharpening your saw is essentially just improving yourself in different aspects of life, the four aspects that I mentioned, so that you're constantly improving. And if you're ever not like super, we'll say, sharp in one of these aspects, and you go through trouble of some kind, or you experience difficulty in your life, it could be because one of these saws maybe isn't as sharp as they should be. And that's very um, we'll say philosophical, as someone who's most certainly not philosophical. And I've had my fair share of philosophy courses in my undergrad degree, and they were dog water, in my opinion. Um, debating whether or not I want to curse in these videos or not. So that's where that hesitation there came from. Um, that is normally how I would conduct myself, even as an aspiring professional trying to get a degree. Anyways, there's a quote from that book that I want to talk about, and it reads as follows. And this is in the concept of another one of his habits, uh, where he talks about like win-win people, like win-win mindset, which is essentially like the idea that if you're ever in a conflict or in some kind of negotiation, both you and someone else could win. One of you could lose, the other could win. You could, et cetera, or you could both lose. And he proposes that the end all be all is that ideally, in a world where we're taught like someone has to lose, someone has to win, whether it's business related or etc. Really, if we decide to take the time to look at all options, everyone can win, um, which I think is great, first off. But the quote itself is actually in regards to individuals who are lose win kind of people, which I would describe myself as such. I usually try to um, avoid conflict and just, especially if it's like group work or something like that, it's usually like, let me just let, whoever wants to be in control. And as long as we, you know, reach the goals that I'm willing to make, or the goals we have to hit, say it's like team project or like teamwork at like a job or something like that. As long as we reach the end goal, end all be all, I don't care how we get there. I'll just take the back seat and redirect if need be, right? So to finally get back to this quote, I apologize for my rambling. Like I said, I'm not very good at talking about my thoughts and feelings, so it often comes across really rambly. Um, and actively playing the game instead of having pre-recorded stuff is not helping either. But the quote goes as follows: "Lose win people bury a lot of feelings, and unexpressed feelings never die. They are buried alive and come forth in uglier ways. Psychosomatic illnesses, particularly of the respiratory, nervous, and circulatory systems." And as I mentioned, that's from Stephen R. Covey from his book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And you may be wondering, hey, uh, that's a great quote and all that, but what does it have to do with you? You're a aspiring physical therapy student. You're probably somewhat healthy, et cetera, or at least you know how you should be, and all that fun stuff. What does the lose win mentality have to do with? So as um as I mentioned, I've kind of always been a lose win person, which means I kind of let people walk all over me. Um, and I think in doing so, I experience negative emotions more often than not for even like trivial things, such as, oh, we have a class project, or oh, we have this project or that project, et cetera, et cetera. This is how I want to do it. This is how they want to do it. And I'm just like, you know what, fine, we'll do it your way. Um, but I think it kind of goes beyond that. Not to trauma dump. This could probably be its own video altogether. But my childhood was not fantastic by any means of the imagination. And as a result of that, a lot of things, memories, feelings, etc., got repressed, and I've never talked about them before, and I've never really like thought to bat an eye at, quote unquote, until recently, after reading this book and after a couple other events transpiring in my life, um, especially last year in the physical realm. Uh, Essentially, and this is hard to talk about because I've only really talked about it with a select few people, and a lot of times I joke about physical conditions just because I have a dark, dry humor. Um, but in a physical sense, this quote says, if you don't talk about these thoughts or feelings as a lose-win individual, someone who gets stepped on all the time, quote unquote, you're gonna do yourself some actual harm. If the feelings are felt long term, and it's a tough thing to say, and I'm not sandbagging, but as of last year, as part of my physical therapy school requirements, I have to go on clinical rotations. This isn't anything new, I wouldn't say, but as a result of those rotations, you have to go on you have to take physicals. They have to make sure like you're medically healthy to do all this stuff. You have your vaccinations and everything like that because you don't want to be spreading illnesses in hospital settings and all that fun stuff. Well, I'm getting all this routine blood work done, and they're like, hey, we're not really loving these numbers. Can you come in, and I'd love to do, and they is my PCP and lab techs and all that fun stuff, and they're like, we'd love to do some more testing and just to get a better idea of like what's going on. Now, there's a lot of details I'm not telling you here because obviously some of it is pertinent medical info, and some of it is also just not necessarily important to the story. But essentially, we're going through this stuff. I have really high blood pressure, and I've always had high blood pressure for my life. The men in my family have histories of awful cardiovascular health, and that's just how it is, right? So I've always assumed my high blood pressure was just because I'm kind of clocked. I've been stamped with the bad cardiovascular system, and to some extent there probably is some of that going on, but we were looking into it. We did an ultrasound, we did EKG or ECG, echocardiogram, and it turns out that at the ripe age of 24, I don't know when it happened, but I have supposedly had a heart attack. Um, and I mean, the day obviously the day, now I can say it without like a lot of issue, and I've told the people that I care about it. But at first, like when I first heard about it, it was like, damn, like really, not in like a, oh really, that's lame, but like in a, that would explain a lot kind of thing. It was really eye-opening, and I was really really uncomfortable with knowing this fact now. And I'd be lying if I said it doesn't hang over my head. But now that it's happened, there's only so much you can do, right? um, to kind of, you can't change that heart muscle. It's not like any other muscle in the body. Cardiac muscle does not come back. It does not, you can't rebuild it. It becomes scar tissue, and dies off if you're lucky. And it's just not as effective anymore. And so all this to say, when it comes back to this quote and things like that, and and things of that nature, is that you got to get feelings out. And I think that's where I want to start this, we'll call it, journey of mine, talking about things that ail me. Um, because if you don't, bad stuff can happen. And I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything like that, but like obviously, the first thing that most people think about is, oh, if you have things on your mind, you mentally, you are going to be in a less than ideal state. You're going to be overthinking, which is something I'm great at. But beyond that, depending on how bad it gets to you, you might start, you know, um, isolating yourself. You might start doing this. You might start doing that. If you let it spiral, it's going to make things worse. It can affect you physically, it can affect you mentally, it can affect you socially, and I mean, it might be able to affect you spiritually. I'm still currently working on that aspect of my life. That's another story in and of itself. But I would imagine for those that are spiritual, it could affect you spiritually as well. All this to say that, obviously I'm starting this whole journey. The point of this video was just to be like, all right, we're setting the stage for some deep conversations. I, I mentioned that I've told my loved ones and friends and family that, yeah, I've had a heart attack. And believe it or not, I haven't told all of my friends. So if some of them find this video by some chance, there's a good chance they will not have known this. Um, but I just want to open up the floor and be like, hey, listen, this is not going to be um, there might be we might talk some motivation, we might talk a little bit of everything on this channel, but it's also, if nothing else, it is going to be deep. So this is just a video to kind of set the stage. um, there's one last quote that I want to kind of leave with, and ever since making all these changes in my life physically, getting to the gym more, reading the Bible, or, even just like refining my spirituality, which I had when I was younger and then kind of lost as my life got difficult, and then doing all this stuff for my social and mental and emotional aspects of my life. One of the things I have done beyond reading this book, which is technically part of a school like assignment for one of my classes, um, but I've been looking at things. I've been reflecting more. I've been hearing people out and just kind of looking at like self-improvement stuff, because I think for a long time I knew I wasn't okay with what I had going on physically, but I never really considered that maybe part of the physical issues that I have is also because maybe I'm forgetting about the social or the mental or the emotional, and now that's in the spotlight for me. um, so anyways, to kind of bookend this, I have a quote. um, Another one. This one is not from Stephen Covey and the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. This one's actually from a YouTuber that I just saw today, and I watched the video. And their name, I'm gonna probably butcher it, is Bailey Schildbach. She has a podcast, and she does a lot of vlogs, and I believe the podcast is called Limitless. I don't want to get that wrong, but I believe that's what it's called. And her quote goes, "We cannot sit and stare at our wounds forever. We have to sew them up. We have to keep going." And I think at the time it just hit for me because, I'm watching this video. She's talking about wanting to be a surgeon, and she's got conditions that make my supposed heart attack look like child's play, um, that she's living with daily, right? And it's just one of those things where, like, it kind of clicked. And I think it really helped me to understand, you know, that I don't have to let this define me, but in order to continue working on myself, to see these benefits and all that, I need to kind of reconcile with the past. And prior to this year, I really hadn't. I left all of this stuff very much concealed. Um, and maybe we'll revisit this topic and my physical condition, but I don't want to make these too long. And I have plenty of topics to talk about. But I'm hoping that as I go through these talks, that I get some benefit out of it, and maybe there's something in it that you guys can get out too. Um, Other than that, though, I think for this convo, just to kind of get the ball rolling, I think that's going to be it for today's video. I wish you all nothing but the best. Hopefully, if you guys are on a journey of some kind, whether it's physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially, whatever it happens, socially, geez Louise, I hope that it's going well, and I hope you make great strides this year. Other than that, I will talk to you guys later.